Can you hear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah,
then just keep an eye on the levels. You want to talk right into the mic.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
sounds perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're recording?
I'm recording. Are you recording?
I'm not recording.
That's probably a good thing.
Maylan Newton.
Maylan Newton.
Maylan Newton.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
He
Fantastic.
tends to sit down with us at almost every tools event.
Pretty happy about it. He's a smart cat. Did you know
He's
that?
a smart cat.
Let's see. You've been at Tools how many years now?
This is my third, maybe fourth.
Do you? We were just talking when we got here. If there is a shift in the way the event feels, it feels bigger. It feels more concise. It feels more professional. There's more people here already, and the event's not even started yet. Man, it feels like it's really doing something this year.
Well, I see improvements in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
And in fact, Brett and I were just talking about you got to take every show you do and you learn from it. And you change the next one. So progressively, every show should get better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you got to look at it from the perspective. I'm a speaker, and an exhibitor, so I look at it differently than an attendee does.
Yeah.
And you got to take in consideration, lots of people.
Right.
Because the speaker wants are very different than what the attendee needs and wants are. So I think they're doing a much better job than they have in the past of progressing this in the right direction.
I agree. And I think we've seen it's the most improvements we've seen in 1 year in most any show. I mean, all the shows are growing and getting amazing and year after year they do better and better. But it seems like this year, this one everything that you could have said in the past was
it popped quite a bit.
Yeah.
There was a remarkable difference because it was pretty much the same from the first time we came here into last year. But this year, all of a sudden, all the rooms are labeled and there's a lot of activity around the booth. They're handing out T-shirts and it looks well branded.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
Well, and from the speaker exhibitor side, we got things to post on our social media and things to share in our emails and stuff that we didn't have, I think, in the past, at least not as professionally done. So it's hard for me to promote an event if I'm not given, the logos and the links and stuff. Definitely, that was an improvement.
Absolutely. And I've seen way more out there about it. The social sharing was way improved. And we just had somebody come in and he said, hey, if it hadn't been for listening to the show, I wouldn't have even known this was an event if I hadn't been in the Facebook groups. There's a lot of shops that don't know about these things. One of the things that we always talk about is the fact that a lot of times there are shops right around an event that won't go to that event. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think sometimes, there's so many variables, but they don't market in their core market area because they think everybody knows it.
Yeah.
So they go after, the further distance attendees. And so they forget the groundworks of the 50 miles around the event. And in some ways that's harder to do.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a matter of the marketing needs to be, everybody has a voice, whether it be the magazines, the podcast, like myself, we send emails out ad nauseum, and I don't mind putting stuff on there about events, but you got to get us the event information and you have to get it in advance.
Right. It can't be the day of the event. Well, I have to have it a month, 2 months, 3 months.
There's a show coming up in just a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And just before I left to come here, I got some stuff from them saying, oh, please mention us. We're 10 days away from the event.
Yeah.
I'm going to be on the road. Literally, I'm not going to go home before I go to that event. So there's not a lot I can do on the road.
Yeah.
But if they would have given it to me 3 months ago, 4 months ago, it would have gone out to thousands of different emails and social media posts and stuff. And one of the things I want to say, this is directed towards the attendees.
Yeah.
Is the attendees don't understand what it takes to put a show on like this.
Oh, man.
They start the day after this show, they start for next year, and they come and something's just not perfect, and they're all up in arms about it. But I look at all the things that could go wrong that don't go wrong. It's kind of like, you guys travel, so how many bags are in the air at any one time?
Yeah.
And your bags made it?
Yeah.
It's not the exception, it's the rule. And the show is the same way. You're going to have little hiccups.
Yeah.
And when you think about the logistics of doing one of these, like what you guys go through to get your podcast here.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fact you could forget one connector or forget one cable.
Yeah.
The odds are great. And when you do it professionally and you do it all the time, you get very good at it and people take it for granted.
Yeah. And I learned so much of that the more involved I became with ASTE, right? And as an event person, right, you're hosting these events and you look back and you say, wow, nobody even noticed. You know what I mean? Like nobody even saw that we screwed that up or it didn't hit the mark that we thought it should hit. And we're over here freaking out about it. And that freak out's part of what makes an event good is because they're trying to stay in front of it. They're trying to stay on top of it. And the more professional an event becomes, right, the more people who are involved with the event and that exponential growth you see in an event makes it better and better and better. But it also opens more and more doors for mistakes to happen and things to blow up in your face that you didn't even realize were there.
Well, I think that what ends up happening a lot of times is that you get into a very much of a rut.
Yeah.
The same 10 things that happened at the last 10 events that you went to, the same 10 things happen because they get the same vendor, the same supplier, the same team. It's the same. And you get some good consistency with the show, but at the same time, you do hear that especially the shops that go to multiple years of that same event, they start to say, I don't know. Like now there's no reason for me to go back unless there is a marked difference in the presenters. There has to be.
I was getting ready to bring that up.
Yeah, so they have to look at the classes and they have to go, I haven't seen this person, and this is an interesting topic that I think we need to cover in the shop. That gives me a reason to go. But without that, just to show up, because they know they're going to get, this is the conference food, and this is when we're going to dinner, and this is the speaker, and this is the award show, and it ends up being very monotonous.
We were in a meeting the other day. I'm not trying to kick the hornet's nest. I'm sorry. We were in a meeting the other day, and you said management training or owner training doesn't even need to be in an event. And you said because all the owners say, well, it's the same content over and over and over again. When you hear me say that he said that, what do you think?
I think that's the industry view. But and I'm gonna kick the hornet's nest too.
Okay.
A little bit, is that there are presenters out there that their stuff never changes. I mean, they've been presenting the same stuff for 35 years.
Yeah.
And that is a problem. Speaking for my own world, I try to change stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
I try to make it, time sensitive. What's going on in the world today?
You've got like 100 I looked through your class catalog. You've got like 150 classes. Are you just bored and sit around and make classes all day?
Sometimes. But you know what really happens? Like I'm bored ever.
I know, right?
So what typically happens is I sit and I listen to these shop owners at lunch or breakfast or whatever, and they go, man, I don't know how to handle this. And it goes, hey, that'd be a good class. And so every year I produce 3 or 4 new classes based on things that I've heard. And for example, I just wrote a class called Professionalism.
Okay.
And it's like, people look at me like, aren't we already professionals? No.
Yeah.
Not only are we as owners aren't, but we're not teaching our employees to be professionals. And if you don't believe me, just look at the people that come to the show, how they dress, how they act. And I'm not dinging anybody for this, but if we want to elevate our industry and become, much higher thought of, then we need to step up our game.
Yeah.
I do 6 or 7 trade shows a year. My trade show budget is about $70,000, $80,000 a year. And I've gone to, for example, I'm going to the Automotive Transmission Rebuilders Show actually on Monday.
Yeah.
I'm going to that in Nashville. And there's been for years a guy who shows up there, it looks like he came off the build bench covered in transmission fluid, and he comes to the event.
Okay.
That's what the people think of us, right? And we're perpetuating that by showing up at an event like that. I mean, you don't have to wear a sport coat and a tie, but you can change into clean clothes or, have a uniform that says I'm in training.
When you bring that up, because ASTA is the combination of the Independent Garage Owners of North Carolina and the North Carolina Tire Dealers Association. And I saw a tremendous difference in the professionalism and the image presented by tire stores and standard repair shops. Now, one of the common things you hear coming from our industry is these guys, they're like Jiffy Lube and they're just throwing junk together and they're not tightening drain plugs and, all of these things. But there's a lot of these tire stores that kind of fit into that mold and they're way more professional than we are.
Absolutely.
Like substantially. And they run a much tighter ship than we do. They know their financials. And I don't know why it's such a difference between those two things. In other words, like
they're operating on tiny margins. You can't screw that up. And they have to go at a certain pace and on these tight margins in order to make all the things work. So now you're going to see 3 times the car count. So you can't have a lapse in judgment or processes where we just didn't follow the process that time, because then the wheel comes off. Somebody dies.
And if you think about it, most of the people own a tire store are business people first. They're not car nuts.
Yeah.
Most people in our industry are car guys. We are in the car business because we like cars, right?
Right.
We're not business people. And this goes back to David's remark is, if you go around and you look at all the people in the management classes, most of the owners are in the technical classes because they think fixing the car is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not. It's running your business properly. I'm doing, profit structuring, financial analysis, how to set your hourly rate. And most owners don't want to go to that because they don't want to think about having to change their rate or understand their numbers because they're not numbers people. They're car people.
Is that why you didn't put changing your hourly rate in the name of the class?
Yeah. Actually, I think the name of the class should be Get Yourself Paid. Yeah. Come to this class.
Yeah. But David pointed that out the other day. And he was talking about, we're going to pick on him a little bit because he's our friend, but Brandon Dills. And he was like, nobody went to that class to see Brandon Dills. Nobody likes Brandon Dills. They went to that class because it was a good name.
I didn't say nobody likes Brandon Dills. I just said nobody went there. He does have good name recognition. Something I've harped with him about is leveraging that because he has a shop too, and he's trying to attract technicians.
Yeah.
I don't think he's hired a one that knew anything about jarhead diagnostics. That should be his appeal. It's like, hey, come in and you're going to be part of this whole thing. Anyway.
But I mean, the name of the class.
The name of the class nailed it. Killed it with the name of the class. It was like this massive hole. Nobody was talking about this one thing. And that's what he named the class. Hey, you know that thing that everybody wants to know but nobody talks about? That's what I'm naming the class. And he had 160 people in the class.
Yeah.
Insane. And it was a good class. I saw he sent me the slides and I saw the slides and I gave him some suggestions on changing some things up, but it's a good class. But there were a lot of good classes down there and all of them didn't have 160 people on them. Right. He killed it with that title.
There's a lot of problem also in classes in general that people think if they attend the class, they actually believe that old saying, knowledge is power. And that's not true. It's implementation of your knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, in this room, we have 3 very intelligent people. But if we don't ever use our intelligence.
Oh, they're down there.
They're in the shadows over there. If you don't ever use your intelligence, you don't gain anything from it.
Yeah.
So you go to a class and you go, that's a great idea. And it dies right there. Or it gets written down on the pad of paper or on the notebook. And you go back and you get into the fight of fixing the car or dealing with this fire or this customer. And you never implement that. And, it goes back to what you're talking about, the trade shows, complacency. And a lot of these people will look and go, oh, hey, look, it's so-and-so talking. I've been to his classes before. maybe that class has changed. Maybe the perspective has changed. So you can't just write it off because you've been to the class before, because my classes change every time I give them.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time talking to owners, and I'm out in the field with owners and coaching owners. So what I used to talk about in this class is different today than it will be tomorrow, for example.
What do you see as the biggest weakness for owners right now? Because, one of the things when we started doing the things in my shop to fix it was that I thought that it was certain things that were wrong in the business. And I talk to shop owners all the time, and they send me a message and I just need to fix this one thing. This one tech's the problem in my shop, and that's why I've never been successful. I doubt it, right? Let's look at the numbers, right? And so you start looking in, and it's never what they think it is. It's never. So when you look at all these shop owners you talk to, what's the biggest thing that they're missing? What's the biggest mistake they make?
They're too busy fixing cars to run their business. They're worried about the wrong things. So you have to fully understand your numbers. For example, we pay money to get a profit and loss statement, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the history of what happened in the shop for that period of time. So last month, for example. They don't read it. They don't understand it. And in about 90% of the cases, it's wrong. And I'll tell you how. Just had this conversation with the shop. He got his P&L for the first, I think, 9 months, maybe 8 months. And so what he does, he goes to the net profit line, right? Mm-hmm. It says $128,000. He goes, I'm doing a good job. And I go, wait a minute. So this says you paid all your bills and you have $128,000. Do you have $128,000 in the bank? Well, oh my gosh, no. Then where did that money go between what you have in the bank and what this says you have? I don't know. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They are spending money that they don't know. And so, for example, in his case, he's paying bills that he can't tell me what the monthly payments are. But because the accountant's following the generally accepted accounting principles, they're not on his P&L, they're on his balance sheet. But every month he's making a $400 payment that comes out of that profit. The balance on his balance sheet changes, but it doesn't show up as money out, right?
And he doesn't even know there's a balance sheet.
He doesn't. Yeah. It balances.
Yeah.
Okay. Why does it balance?
Right.
Is it supposed to? And to me, I'm just like everybody else. I started out not knowing any of this. And, the epiphany that hit me when I realized I got to understand the numbers. Mm-hmm. Then the second thing is you have to have long-term plans. When I interview an employee, I will ask, what are your 5-year plans, Lucas? If you come to work for me, what are your 5-year plans? Because I want to know if you're thinking further than Friday. Mm-hmm. How many employees have ever asked you when they applied for a job, Lucas, what's your shop's 5-year plan? Where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years?
Since we started the podcast, because that's one of the things that we talk about is interview your potential employer, right? Since we've started doing that, the last 3 people that I've interviewed, we talk about, here's our 5-year plan. Here's our vision. Here's where we want to be. And they talk about where they want to be. I've spent this entire trip up here talking to Ryan Deckert, who works for me. And Ryan's, here with us today. And I've talked about hey man, what makes you happy? And where do you see yourself? And it's interesting because some of the things we talked about, and
what's the obsession with the happiness thing?
I've thought a lot about that lately.
I know. I understand why.
I want to know what happy is for other people. I don't think we really know what happy is.
I don't think anybody knows.
I know, but I think
they understand it.
I think we just go through life and we have this idea that one day we want to be happy, but we don't know what happy is. For us, we've not defined happy. For us, we've not tried to achieve happy. We've just said, I'm not happy. I don't like this. Man. Right? And so we've never taken steps to understand it. We've never really thought about it.
And it's a moving target because I'll be honest with you, at your age, my definition of happy is different than at my current age.
Yeah.
Right? And at 16, happy was very, very different.
Yeah. So
that's why I'm a big believer in let's figure out where you want to be in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years and work towards that. I actually mentioned, I think on a comment on one of the Facebook groups, it was about, I've helped a lot of people buy homes because I've asked them, what are you looking for? What's your long-range plan? Well, I want to own a home someday. All right, let me work with that and help you get that.
So, that was one of the things that Ryan mentioned. He wants to buy a home. And I want to say this because I've got a question about that. One of the things that we talk about is we're coming up the road, and he's like, well, I want to have kids. And so we talked about a lot of like my experiences, and my parents had me when they were up in years, right? Like my parents are up in years now. And so I mentioned like, hey, that was one of the things, like I always kind of felt like I got cheated. I didn't get as much time with mom and dad as my brothers did. You know what I mean? And like, I think about that with my son now. It's like, I'm a little bit older. I'm not as old as this gray haired thing, but, I'm a little bit older now. And so when we had my son 5 years ago, it kind of hit me like, holy cow, I'm having him later in life like my parents had me. And so that was one of the things as we're talking about that, Ryan's like, holy cow, I never really thought about that. Like I've decided I'm going to wait till I'm 40 to have kids.
Right.
Well, that's...
Did you say 40?
Yeah, he said 40.
Interesting. Good. How old is he? He's a baby.
Yeah, he's in his 20s.
Yeah.
So
that's not a bad thing, though.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's something to think about. We get these ideas in our head and we don't really truly vet them out.
That's the guide to wealth in America, isn't it? Wait to have kids until you're older in a marriage.
There's lots of reasons you should wait, because they put a tremendous strain on a marriage because they're 100% demanding, right?
Yeah.
100% of your attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
David shared a little bit about how he does it. Let's say that an employee wants to buy a home, right? And they say to you, because that's kind of like the American dream, right?
Right.
Maylan, how do we go about starting that? Because I'm getting ready to try and do that with some of my employees. They want to buy a home. What's the first step as a business owner? And what's the first step for an employee we take?
Well, the first thing I would do is have a meeting with them and their spouse.
Okay.
Make sure they're on the same page.
Okay.
Because you need both of them behind it. And then what I've always done is I've, this is multi-pronged to me. We set our minimum expectations. Let's say it's you, Lucas. I hired you. I set minimum expectations.
Okay.
Right. This is how I know you're successful at your job. Minimum expectation. And then if you come to me and say, hey, this is my long-term goal is to own a home, then I take those minimum expectations and I raise them. And I say, if you can achieve this expectation, then we'll take this much money and put it in an escrow account for you. So instead of giving them a bonus that they can waste on remote-controlled cars or beer or pizza, we just put it in an escrow account. That's their money. If they leave us, they can take it.
Yeah.
But I put it so they can't spend it. And then we can have several tiers to that. And then you send that paycheck stub home to the wife. So they know that this pay period, you put $500 in the escrow account.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have them both on the same page, she's not going to tell him, hey, go back to work, have fun. I like what's going on here.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of people get bonuses and they don't ever share with their spouse, nor do they
got
keep
a bonus.
them.
Yeah. They spend it.
Right.
That's a good idea.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar. Sounds like a really
great minds thinking alike here.
It's something like that.
How do we?
Here's the issue though. So I've got one that rents a house for a chunk of money. It's very expensive. But no wife, no kids. He doesn't plan to get married. Doesn't want any kids. And I don't necessarily blame him, but you still want to push that person towards some sustainability. You're going to have to own some real estate, dude. You can't, we're dumping a lot of money into a 401k and a Roth IRA. He's got both.
Right.
And they're both funded. But yeah, there should be a little bit of chunk. And it's almost like, hey, let's find you an investment property, maybe a duplex. You stay in one side, stop paying rent.
Right.
Dump all that money into your retirement, or double it up and pay down the mortgage and have your rentor next to you pay your mortgage for you. You don't have to worry about necessarily paying the rent.
So, we live in an area that is expensive, right? Similar to your area, expensive. And so,
I don't know how you do it in California.
I mean, rent where we're at for a 2-bedroom house is $2,000 a month.
That's a 1-bedroom apartment in
right?
town.
Yeah, exactly. But so you take somebody, and I'll give you the perfect example is George has long wanted to buy a house. And so how do you set realistic expectations, and when do you know? Like in George's case, George is older, and George has got debt, and George has got things that are coming his way. His health is not what it should be. And so we've had some hard talks, and I've said, I don't know how feasible it is that you go buy a house. I'm not trying to tell you not to or to, but I'm concerned about him.
The health thing is whatever. He needs to, the health thing, he needs to get that managed for sure. But get out of debt and then buy him a house. Dude, what was that place in Tennessee you told me? Mountain something or whatever? Yeah. It's what, 20, 30 minutes
That's where
away?
He's living now, yeah.
The houses were hella cheap there. Yeah. It was crazy. What you could, $250,000 bought you a flipping mansion on 3 acres.
Right. And they don't have they don't have income tax?
They don't have income tax there either. And it's just on the other side of the border. Like you just have to drive. It's a little bit of a drive, but the money you would save. So now
they do have a little bit of an issue with Mexican Americans.
That's okay. I can deal with the Mexican Americans if I've got enough land around me. If I got enough land. Dogs,
minefield,
rabid dogs,
yeah,
rabid dogs, yeah, and guns. That'll take care of it.
Well, they have to take some ownership of this, right? You can't fix his health; he's got to fix that.
Yeah,
and it's having those conversations, and you bring up a good plan. So here's somebody. Maybe you buy the house as an investment property for yourself, and you give him subsidized rent in it as a reward or part of his bonus. There's this, you can be very creative, but one of the things you need to do is you need to sit him down with a certified financial planner and teach him budgeting and teach him, because one of the things that I talk about with clients a lot is, it's like, what do you want? Well, I want to do this. Why aren't you doing it? I don't have the money. Let's talk about that. What can you give up? If you give up Diet Dr. Pepper and bourbon, how much money would that save us a month? If you gave up eating out every day, 3 times a day, how much money would that save you? Are you willing to make that sacrifice?
Yeah, and I've definitely got one who really worries about money and unwilling to make any sacrifice, wants to live a king's life and
there's nothing. No, hold on. There's nothing wrong with living the king's life. No. The problem though is that you're not happy with the king's life.
Right.
You want the king and the queen's life. It's like, dude, your budget, your income dictates this lifestyle.
Correct.
But it is a fantastic lifestyle, but they keep pushing. And so now it's not, it's the whole, and this, there's something deeper there, but you pick up I'm going to go down the rabbit hole here because it's whatever. You buy a computer. I like to build them. They're fun. You put them together and you want to see how they perform. So you put the thing together. And then like 2 months later, some new piece of hardware comes out. There was nothing wrong with what you just got. And I have to fight this all the time. There's nothing wrong with what you just got. You put it together, it's performing beautifully. It's doing extremely well. Some new piece of hardware comes out, and all of a sudden you somehow convince yourself that you need to go out and get it. And it's $1,000, $1,500. It's not cheap. Same thing with these stupid phones. Like, you have to go out and get the new phone. Oh, you know what? We're going to make this simple for you. Just pay $50 a month in perpetuity for forever on top of your plan, and you'll always be able to get your new phone. Well, that $50 a month, what could that do for you? Putting it away.
Right.
Especially if you're young.
$6,000
like
a year.
18 years. Yeah, 18 years old. How much is that going to build up over time?
So
you talk to anybody that's moved past the Dave Ramseys. If you talk to any of the financial guys, they'll tell you that the number one wealth stealer in America, is car payments.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Just drive something cheaper. That's it. You don't have to, it's not like you have to go drive a jalopy, but the car payment can't be $700 to $1,000 a month because you have to have that F-150. But buy a 7-year-old, not for F-150. Get yourself a nice Toyota. Get yourself a nice Toyota that's 7 years old, that's $15,000, make $320 car payments, a month car payments, and put that extra $400 that you were going to pay to get that F-150 into a retirement account. And in 20 years, you're going to be a flipping millionaire.
And so here's the question about that, though, is what did all the people say when we had these conversations recently? And you kind of highlighted some of this, is they said, well, it's not fair for you to dictate.
I'm not dictating.
I know.
I'm telling you what other people are saying. I'm not even saying it.
Well, I understand that. But so as a shop owner, you look at these guys and you somewhat kind of feel like, well, I don't feel like I have the right to say that to them.
They just don't work for you. I'm sorry. I'm drawing the line in the sand. No, screw them. Screw them. All the I want more and more and more and more and more, because they're trying to fulfill some hole they have in their lives. I can't fix this for you, dude. I'm sorry. You know what the answer is, by the way? You keep asking all these people. You know what the answer is?
What's the answer?
Contentment. That's happiness right there. You appreciate contentment requires, I'm not talking about complacency. Don't mistake the two. Don't conflate them. I'm talking about contentment. You appreciate what you have in life.
100%.
Whatever it happens to be. The littlest thing. It doesn't matter what it is. What Rick said was 100% right. We asked Rick what happiness. He said, I opened my eyes. At the very least, you're not dead.
Yeah, I love it.
And if you have a life-changing experience, your life changes because of that.
Yeah.
Right? When they tell you you're not going to have any more sunrises, it changes the way you think about things. And
absolutely.
That's part of the problem with today. We take everything for granted. That we have electricity, we have water, we have the ability to buy these cars, right? There's a great book out, by the way, called The Millionaire Next Door. Have either of you read it?
Yeah. Tom Stanley. Yeah.
Right. It's a great book, and it talks about what you're ranting about right now.
Yeah.
It's a choice you make. Buy $20,000 of clothing a month, or put it in the bank and become a millionaire and not have to work ever again in your life.
Well, I mean, I guess the thing comes back to, though, is that we continue to experience people who say, yeah, but that's not your right to tell me, and I'm mad at you because you're not paying me as much as I feel like I should get paid.
Well, again,
I want this, I want that. And so is that what it comes down to? Like David said, hey, I'm sorry, this just isn't the place for you.
Well, in my opinion, it's the minimum expectations. So if I set minimum expectations, Lucas, you're coming to me as a technician. You work 40 hours a week. I expect you to bill 40 hours a week. I'm going to pay you to do that. If you don't do that, I can't afford to pay you that. And I can't afford to pay you more than that unless you exceed that, right? Now it's in your hands. It's not mine, the employer's job. I'm providing the opportunity. You earn the money. I'm not giving you more money because you're here. I'm giving you more money because you're exceeding those expectations.
100% pragmatic and very logical. Yes. Now inject delusional human emotion into it. And all of a sudden, you working 40 hours a week, billing 40 hours a week, and me paying you a sustainable and competitive salary is no longer enough. Now it's, hey, the market has changed. I feel that my skills require that I be paid 10% more, 20% more, 30% more. And they've convinced themselves of that. Right. Okay, great. So they maybe they go out into the market and they find some desperate employer who's willing to pay them that extra money. And it does end up being expectations. The expectation level, if I'm going to pay you this 20% more, is going to be 20% more at this other shop. Maybe it isn't. But they end up convincing themselves that what I'm doing now is not enough. Again, it's a lack of contentment.
Right.
No contentment and appreciation for their situation ends up being you end up with an unhappy employee. They're just not happy in that they're not content. This isn't enough for them. There's something more. Well, what does that more have to be? Like, what else do we need to get into? And here's the thing, like, it's great that they want to improve, right? It's great that they want a little bit more money. I'm down for all that. I have no problem with that. It's when is enough going to be enough?
And that's really what it comes back to for me as well, is because the market has shifted in such a way that one has to ask themselves, is this sustainable? right? Because there's a lot of shops out here. We were talking about dealerships the other day. Somebody brought up to me. He said, I'm going to tell you. He said, I work for a large corporation, and we have over 250 dealerships. And he said, I'm going to tell you right now. He said, yeah, did we raise our technician salary or our technician pay? He said, we absolutely did. He said, but I can promise you one thing. If it gets slow, if we lighten up, those expensive technicians are gone.
Right.
And he said, those promises, he said, our promise is to our shareholders. Our promise is to that bottom line. And he said, I can promise you right now that come hard times, those people, they've asked for a lot, and they want a lot, and they demand a lot. And for that, we are going to demand a lot of them.
Yeah.
And the moment that this comes with, what was it you told me about CEOs? I was talking about CEOs, and I said, oh my gosh, they make all these hundreds of millions of dollars. And he said, yeah, but look at what they give up. They give up a family. They give up sustainability. They give up security. They give up all of these factors of life. And he said, so that's what they're getting paid for, because they can't live a normal life like everybody else as a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, of a big company. And so that's kind of what this guy was hinting at, was that, look, you want big boy pay, you're going to deal with big boy risk.
That's my frustration. This is probably just that 1% of technicians, but it's the loud ones. They get this idea that, hey, it needs to be six figures, it needs to be all this. And it's just like you're saying, like, hey, we're moving into big boy pay now. That's going to require a level of performance and sacrifice that you have never had to do or put up with ever. And all of a sudden, now you're moving into this whole other world here that I don't think you're prepared for. You think you are.
Yeah.
You're not. It's cutthroat.
And you also have to remember that your employees think you're rich because you own a business, right?
Yeah, the Laura Lee and Eric Schmidt story.
Yeah.
They have no clue what it takes to run that business. And we're so afraid of explaining to them what it takes that they actually live in a fantasy world that if you're charging X number of dollars, let's use round numbers, $100 an hour, and they're getting paid $30 an hour, that you're pocketing $70. What they don't understand is you're actually pocketing $3.
What's wrong?
There's something flashing on here.
Yeah, it's telling you that you didn't empty the hard drive.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah. Oh. So what do you do with somebody who's mired down in the muck and the mire, right? And what I mean by that is, what do you do with somebody who, because there's shop owners out there who have wonderful people they care about, they love them very much, and they want the best for them, but they also recognize that you've got this person in here who, and the fear is, because I've talked to lots of shop owners in this spot, is the fear is that they are going to become more and more toxic, because they've come up in their mind and they feel like you've done something wrong. They feel like they deserve something that they're not getting. They feel like this isn't okay. What do you do with somebody? Because everybody from the outside looking in can see it, right? They can see like, oh my God, you're living a very egregious lifestyle, and you're blowing all your money, and you're doing all of these things, yet you're mad at everybody else in your life because it's not working. In some ways, that kind of comes back to a mental illness. I don't want to say mental illness, but that comes back to be it depression or whatever it is. How do you deal with that? And it's not necessarily our responsibility to deal with, but there's a lot of shop owners who they're in that situation. They say, well, I just can't let him go. I just can't pay more. Well, what's my solution?
Well, first of all, I think part of our problem is we don't communicate well. We don't talk to them about this stuff. Think about how many shop owners that have a toxic employee, and you ask them, have you had a sit down with them? No, it doesn't do any good. Or, yeah, I did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it boils down to we have to become leaders, not bosses. We need to become leaders and provide help.
Okay.
In whatever way you can. But you also have to remember, Lucas, your problems are your fault. There's only so much I can do to help you.
Yeah.
So, you talk about big boy pay. Well, put on your big boy pants and take responsibility for who the hell you are and why you're that way, and fix it.
But society today does not want to do that.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And that's part of our problem.
But I mean, how what do we, as shop owners, we face that every single day. How do we deal with it?
Talk, communicate. Sit down with them.
To find different employees.
And that is a solution.
I'm sorry.
And that's why, my mantra is recruit year round, replace your weakest link. Excuse me. So I'm always recruiting. And if you have a toxic attitude, and that I call them unicorns in my book, if the unicorn walks through the door, I'm hiring them, you're gone.
Yeah.
And I don't become friends with you. This is business to me.
But see
that part's hard.
That is hard.
I get it.
And we've talked many times about that ruthlessness. And some very successful business owners require some level of ruthlessness that David and I have talked about. Do we even have that?